Chapter 1: The Calm Before the Storm. It was a cool April morning in east central Maine when Logan awoke to the buzz of the alarm clock. He and his wife, Joanne, were up their usual times of 4:30 a.m. punctual. Logan quickly grabbed his work clothes and headed out the door to tend to the animals on their homestead. Joanne threw on her housecoat and proceeded to go throw some wood in their wood furnace/boiler, and then she would go cook breakfast before getting ready for her work day. By 6 a.m. the animals had been tended to, and Logan proceeded to go to get ready for his job that paid the bills. He then threw on his uniform after drying off from his shower. On the right breast of his work shirt it said Central Maine Fab. On his left was his first name, and under his name was the position, owner. As Logan came through the door and into the kitchen, he saw his son Harley, age 12, and daughter Rose, age 9. Both were eating their breakfast of orange juice and cereal. Looking at both his children, Logan asked, "Where is your mother?" Rose replied, "It's Wednesday, Dad. She's getting ready to go into the office early due to tax season is almost up, and both your work and her office still haven't sent in their taxes." Logan then proceeded over to the counter where he grabbed a cup of coffee and some already made waffles. He then sat down next to his son at the table. "How's school going, Harley?" he asked. "Great," Harley replied. "I'm working hard so that I can get that new baseball glove you promised me if I kept my grades up." "That is good to hear," Logan acknowledged. Rose then chimed in, "Dad, can Harley and I come down to the shop where you work after our homeschooling at the O'Grady's and our chores are completed?" Logan turned his attention to his daughter and said, "Maybe, depending on how busy we are at the shop." Logan's business was responsible for building attachments for logging companies in the area that couldn't afford the commercially built stuff, as well as any machining and maintenance work on large equipment. After downing his breakfast and coffee, Logan grabbed his lunch from the counter and climbed into his old Ford one-ton pickup and proceeded to work. As he drove to his place of work, which was 30 minutes from his house, he was listening to his usual morning news. The main topic seemed to be about possible talks of state reps having a meeting outside Congress to discuss the issues surrounding the current president and his overstepping into state-level affairs by the current administration. Having heard this, Logan knew things might be getting ugly should the situation get flared anymore. Logan pulled into the parking lot of his business, and he could see his friends were already there. He could see parked in the employee parking the Chevy Tahoe belonging to Jacob O'Grady, whom was his best welder, and the old beat-up Toyota pickup belonging to Ted Roy, his best and head machinist. Jacob and Logan for the longest time used to tease Ted on how he should retire the old 80s vintage pickup for something a little less used. But Ted always made a remark of how no matter how many times he had to make repairs, it would always pay off in the long run. As Logan stepped through the employee's entrance door, he could see that the new projects were almost done, and the longer-term stuff was entering their final stages before completing themselves. Logan walked over to where Jacob was working. He could see Jacob was in the mocking up stages of welding up a section that was to be part of a new arm on a grapple skidder belonging to a local logging outfit, who needed this done to be ready for the late spring startup to the long logging season ahead. "How are you making on this, Jacob?" Logan asked. "Right on schedule and should be ready in a few days," exclaimed Jacob. "Good to hear," Logan replied back. Logan then headed over to the machinist department. Ted was supervising a new hire that was cutting a new turntable gear for an excavator belonging to a local construction company. "Hey Ted, how's the new kid doing on his 4th day?" "Couldn't ask for a better person to man this new CNC machine," replied Ted. "Great to hear," Logan said. "When you get a moment during lunch, can you and Jacob meet me in my office?" asked Logan. "Sure thing," replied Ted. Logan proceeded to his office where he crunched the numbers to see how the company was doing, made a few phone calls to customers and suppliers, and attempted to finish the pile of paperwork that needed to get done. By lunchtime, half the stack of paperwork was completed, and as requested, Jacob and Ted walked in, as requested, with their lunches in tow. "What's up, Logan?" The way Ted here was sounding, "You got something urgent that needs tending to, Jacob," said Jacob. "I do," replied Logan. "Did you hear the news this morning?" he asked. "Sure did." "Is that what's got you worried?" asked Ted. "Indeed, it has me plenty worried," said Logan. "I will be putting the finishing touches on our little project should things go south with these current events. Please make sure you guys have all your preps and gear ready, as I have a bad feeling sitting in my gut. I'll be out of the office for the next few days, so Ted, you're in charge," instructed Logan. Ted replied back, "No problem on my part, as most of the stuff in my department is almost completed." "Good then, it's settled," explained Logan. "I'm hoping this feeling is my overactive imagination getting the better of me, and nothing we have trained for on our weekend retreats and training sessions that we do once a month," he said. Joanne was on her way home from mailing out the company taxes for both her and her husband's businesses, as well as getting a few groceries for her home before picking up the kids from the O'Grady's residence, where they were being homeschooled. As she drove past the town National Guard Armory, she happened to notice a lot of commotion in the fenced-in area where the vehicles were kept, and a lot of other vehicles she didn't recognize. "Oh crap," she mumbled, and continued driving. Once at the O'Grady's, she saw Lisa O'Grady, her children's teacher, as well as the children walking down to the car. "How were they?" asked Joanne. "Couldn't ask for better students," said Lisa. "They did wonderfully." "Good to hear," said Joanne. As they pulled into the driveway leading up to the house, Joanne could see her husband's pickup parked by the barn where the pile of junk, as she called it, was stored. Either her husband was prepping it for a trial run, or something she had her suspicions about had her husband spooked, something that rarely happened to the 6-year Army vet she married. It was 17:30 that evening when Joanne had stepped out the door to tell her husband that the family supper was ready and waiting. As she made it to the halfway point down the driveway, she heard the rumbles and grumbles of a mechanical beast coming to life. Out through the double barn-style doors, which were now open, emerged a large camouflage-cladded behemoth on wheels, pulling a fully enclosed trailer with the same markings. She ran up to the driver's door, which the window was rolled down. "I see the pile runs compared to the condition it was in when you men folk first purchased it," she said sarcastically. "Better than it probably ever did," replied Logan with a smirk on his face. She could see her husband was both excited as well as trying to hide something. "This by chance has nothing to do with what has been on the news or what's going on at our local armory, is it, hun?" asked Joanne. "Possibly," said Logan. "I asked the others in our group to get their stuff together and ready should something come of this, and to mind the shop while I get our stuff ready, as we have most of it already put together," said Logan. "Okay," she said. "Well, supper's ready. Please come and eat." Then she then added before walking back. After putting the large military semi to bed in its machine shop, Logan made his way up the driveway. Once inside, he proceeded to wash the grease and dirt from his hands with some Gojo and hot water. He then sat at his place at the family table and enjoyed his meal of oven-broiled steak, whole kernel corn, and mashed potatoes. Tomorrow, he knew it was going to be a busy day. The sun rose over the top of the giant spruce forest as Logan finished his morning chores, when he saw Jacob and Ted speeding up the drive. "What's the matter?" asked Logan. "The crazy SOBs went and done it," replied Ted. "Did what?" asked Logan with a concern. The states, feeling that the president's anti-gun and anti-prepper legislation had violated states' rights, all voted to leave the Union. Maine, not wanting to be cornered, joined the president's side and stated a state of martial law would go into effect in a day or two, chimed Jacob. Logan quickly went to his truck and drove to his shop. He called all his employees and told them the shop was closed until further notice and to come to get their paychecks. He then called all his customers to come get their equipment, which was completed. After receiving the cash, he then put what was needed to stay in the business account in the bank, and what was Ted and Jacob and his was put into a money pouch to be handed out later. He then raced back to the homestead. If knowing the law enforcement National Guard like he thought he did, they had a day and a half, if possible, to move out. As he pulled into his driveway, he could see that Ted and his wife Candace had the old Toyota loaded up and would be a slow go with that 22 RE 4-banger setting the pace. Jacob had his Cuck-V-themed 1980 Chevy Suburban with matching M101 cargo trailer behind it. He then went to the wash bay in his machine shop and began pressure blasting off any temporary civilian color off his 1981 F350 4x4 to reveal its woodland camo paint. Logan then proceeded to load the loaded down truck into the third of 3 semi-trailers that stored the group's tools, spare parts for breakdowns, 500 gallons of gasoline, and another 600 gallons of diesel fuel for the semi pulling the trailers, plus spare fluids. When that was all said and done, he then walked up to the house to see what was happening there. Jacob and Ted were at the kitchen table drinking coffee and conversing. Joanne and the other wives were busy in the kitchen throwing a big meal together, and his children and Jacob's children were playing board games in the living room. Logan walked over to the counter, poured himself a cup of coffee, and joined the rest of the men at the kitchen table. "So, Ted, have you picked a good route to get us out of the state?" asked Logan. Ted smiled and replied, "Sure have. It's a real pissa." "Well, then don't hold me in suspense. What is it?" asked Logan. "We will take the back roads north and west out of town until we hit the old state military road. We will stay on that road until Old Town. In Old Town, we will take another route over to Canaan, and then pick back up the old military road all the way to the state line," said Ted. After everyone had eaten supper, they settled down for a 4-hour sleep due to the plan calling for all vehicles to be on the road by 2300. By 2300, all trucks were checked over one last time. Logan, Joanne, and all 4 kids climbed in the crew cab semi-truck, which now had 3 trailers hooked up. Ted and his wife were in his Toyota leading the convoy, and lastly Jacob and Lisa were in the Suburban minus its surplus military trailer guarding the rear. The trailer had been moved to the first trailer being pulled by the semi. Logan switched his Cobra Model 29 LTD on and set it to channel 11. "Everyone ready?" he asked. "This is lead, 10-4, replied Ted. 10-4, said Jacob. Logan released the parking brakes and let out on the clutch. The large behemoth rolled to action. As the mini convoy hit the main road from the driveway, Logan could see it was a wise decision to have had the driveway entrance made wider, as all 3 trailers used up every inch of the driveway to make the turn. Once pointed in a straight line, Logan gave the old truck the gears, its coming engine growling out a black smoke cadence. It would be a 6-hour ride before the state line. The end of Chapter 1.